Welcome to the world's first chess championship. In 1886, Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort faced off in the United States for the World Championship title. After the first 5 games, which were played in New York City, Zukertort had taken a 4-1 lead. His victory in the 5th game, thanks to his effective strategy, increased the pressure on Steinitz. Now, according to the agreement, the tournament has moved to St. Louis, where the next set of games will take place. Today we will watch the 6th game, played on February 3rd, 1886. This match was the first in the series to take place in St. Louis, with Steinitz playing as white and Zukertort as black. We will see what strategy Steinitz employs in this game and how Zukertort responds. After the match, we will go through some important newspapers and magazines from that time that commented on the game, giving us insight into how it was received in those days. If you haven't watched the previous games, you can find the links in the description. Now let's watch this important match together. This game was the sixth game of the official First World Chess Championship. It was played between Dr. Zukertort and Mr. Steinitz. The game was played on February 3, 1886 in United States St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis Post-Dispatch published the following articles. Quite a number of gentlemen interested in the scientific game of chess gathered in the director's room of the Harmony Club this afternoon to witness the continuation of the chess match between J. H. Zukertort and W. M. Steinitz. Amongst the strangers present were W. H. Ripley, Secretary of the Indianapolis Chess Club, Major Henry Turner, President of the Brooklyn Club, D. McAfee of the Quincy Club, Dr. E. Holke of Leadville, Colo, Mr. Intrepidi of the Manhattan Club, New York, and Mr. Foster of the Baltimore Club. Arrangements had been made for the seconding of the players, so that Dr. Zukertort had for his best man Mr. William Duncan, and Steinitz Mr. Ben R. Foster. The terms of the match are $2,000 a side, and the championship of the world a limit of 15 moves an hour. The match will be continued in St. Louis until one of the players wins 3 games. 5 games were played in New York, out of which Zukertort won 4 and Steinitz won. The match will be finished in New Orleans and will be continued until either of the chessmen shall have won 10 games. It was not until 1:30 that many of the chess players of the city began to gather at the Harmony Club. They immediately sought the dining room on the first floor, where 6 rows of 11 chairs each been placed for the spectators. The chairs faced the west, and the spectators followed the game from a large board with a 48-inch field elevated on an easel. Mr. Lewis Haller manipulated the pieces on this board. The champions themselves were to sit in the center of the reading room, facing east and west, upon a platform 8 feet by 6 and 1 foot high. This platform was placed directly in the center of the space afforded by folding doors, which were thrown open, giving the audience a side view of the great players who sat in such a position that they could throw their side glances out on Olive Street. The board and pieces were loaned by Judge Chester H. Crum, the board being of Morocco with red and cream squares. The pieces were club-sized Staunton. The rules of the match required 30 moves in the first 2 hours. The time was measured by a unique arrangement of 2 small clocks, one for each player hung on a balance like a seesaw, and so adjusted that neither would run unless it was depressed. Each second looked after the clock of his champion, and as soon as the play was made, pressed down his clock, and the time of the move began to be ticked off. The 2 players arrived at the hall about 2:15 p.m., and the game was started about 15 minutes after. It will be seen that Steinitz, who opened the first, used the well-known Ruy Lopez gambit. The morning papers, in their report of the Steinitz-Zukertort chess match at the Harmony Club yesterday, differ so materially in respect to several moves that the following record of each move compiled from the official score taken by Mr. S. M. Joseph is here presented as the correct account of this brilliant game. As was stated in the Post-Dispatch last evening, in announcing the first 16 moves, the opening by Steinitz was the well-known Ruy Lopez, which, though considered a very safe one, was handled in a masterly manner by the white, who began to drive his opponent toward the wall on the 16th move. The game was played at the Harmony Club until 7 p.m., when after recess an adjournment was taken on the 46th move to the rooms of the Chess, Checker, and Whist Club at 8th and Olive Streets, owing to the previous engagement of the rooms at the Harmony Club. The next contest will take place tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, and the third in the series on Monday. The conditions of the match require that one of the players shall win in St. Louis at least 3 games. The New York Daily Tribune also published the following articles on 4th of February, 1886. St. Louis, February. The sixth game for the chess championship of the world was begun in the director's room of the Harmony Club at 2:30 p.m. today. Among the strangers present were W. H. Ripley, secretary of the Indianapolis Chess Club, Major Henry Turner, president of the Brooklyn Club, D. McAfee of the Quincy Club, Dr. E. Holk of Leadville, Calley, Mr. Intrepidus of the Manhattan Club, New York, and Mr. Foster of the Baltimore Club. Arrangements had been made for the seconding of the players, so that Zukertort had for his best man William Duncan and Steinitz Benjamin R. Foster. Steinitz chose the white and Zukertort the black men, and Steinitz, who opened first, used the well-known Ruy Lopez Knights game. The champions themselves were to sit in the center of the reading room facing east and west upon a platform 8 feet by 6 and 1 foot high. This platform was placed directly in the center of the space afforded by folding doors which were thrown open, giving the audience a side view of the players. The spectators followed the game from a large board with a 48-inch field elevated on an easel. The time was measured by a unique arrangement of two small clocks, one for each player hung on a balance like a seesaw and so adjusted that neither would run unless it was depressed. Each second looked after the clock of his champion, and as soon as the play was made pressed down his clock and the time of the move began to be ticked off. At 6 p.m. Steinitz had a shade the advantage, and an adjournment was taken to the rooms of the St. Louis Chess Club in Olive Street, where the game was renewed. The moves of the chess match made in St. Louis yesterday were telegraphed to the New York Chess Club at number 49 Bowery and repeated on a large suspended board while the record of the game was kept on an adjacent blackboard. Thus, lovers of the game were able to follow the varying fortunes of the players, as well as though they had them in full view. In fact, they found it rather an advantage to have the players over 1,000 miles away, because they were freed from all restraints about analyzing the game. They gathered in knots about the chessboards, and discussed the might have been if Steinitz had done this, or Zukertort had done that, with a great deal of zest. When there came a long break in the game, it required but a little stretch of the imagination to picture Steinitz with legs wide apart, and his dumpy little hands on his thighs, eyeing the board with an expression of amiable gravity, while Dr. Zukertort, with his hands clasped behind his back, paced to and front with quick, nervous steps, secretly rejoicing that the flight of time was being recorded against his opponent. Miss Steinitz collected the admission tickets and sold photographs of the players. Before the game began, the betting was generally about 25-20 that Dr. Zukertort would win the match. New Orleans Times-Democrat also published the following article. The two champions arrived in St. Louis on the 30th ultimo, both looking and professing to be in good health and spirits. They were met at the train by Messrs. Max Judd and Ben R. Foster, acting a special committee on behalf of the St. Louis Chess Checkers and Whist Club, and took up their quarters at Hotel Glen Mord, which is specially convenient to the hall of the Harmony Club, where their games are played. With comparative punctuality, on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 30th instant, both players appeared on the battleground, and after some delay in changing the board, first provided which had red and white squares, and against which Mr. Steinitz protested the first game of the St. Louis section, and the sixth of the match was begun in the presence of an audience some 200 in number and including several ladies. Among those present were many chess players from other cities and sections, and nearly all the prominent players of St. Louis. The arrangements for play seemed to be very similar to those at the games in New York. The public in general occupy the hall of the club, which has a seating capacity of about 600. The players are seated upon a slightly elevated platform in a smaller room adjoining and connected with the larger apartment, and directly between is situated the table for the members of the press. The moves are reproduced, as in New York, upon a mammoth board in full view of the audience, and upon the occasion of the first game, Mr. Lewis Haller of the local chess club successfully managed this portion of the affair. In addition, upon a large score sheet 30 x 40 inches prepared by Mr. S.M. Joseph, the efficient secretary of the club, that gentleman wrote out the score as the play progressed. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, and if you want to support me and encourage me to continue making videos for the rest of this championship, then please subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks for watching.